Welcome back to Outside Source. Let's discuss Kashmir because it is at the centre of controversy once again. And this is because the Indian-administered part of this region is being stripped of its special status. And just in a little while, I'll explore exactly what that means. But first of all, I want to show you the announcement which was being made in India's parliament.
I have come with a firm resolution in my mind that there shouldn't be a second's delay in removing Article 370.
The BJP has murdered the constitution and democracy today.
So a lot of strong reaction drew after that announcement. We heard India's Interior Minister mention Article 370. Now, this is part of the constitution that guarantees that Jammu Kashmir has significant autonomy. It allows the state to have its own constitution, to have a separate flag, and also independence over all matters except for foreign affairs, defence and communications. And it has been in place since 1949. My colleague Yogita Lamai explains why.
At the time of partition, Kashmir was a princely state that India and Pakistan fought a war over. Kashmir's special status was a promise made to the region in return for acceding to India. One of the main privileges it gave was that only permanent residents could buy land here.
Now, that provision was put in place to protect Jammu Kashmir's distinct demographic character. It is the only Muslim-majority state in India, and today's move could end up actually changing that. It's certainly the concern across the border in Pakistan-administered Kashmir. Our reporter Fahad Javad is there for us. Let's get his reaction.
Dozens of people have gathered here in Muzaffarabad, which is the capital city of Pakistan-administered Kashmir. And these people are protesting against the Indian government. These people are carrying black-colored flag and they are holding posters that say that it is a planned Indian conspiracy to change the demography of the Kashmir region.
Well, there's also strong opposition to this move on the Indian side of the border. Here are some of the thoughts from protesters in New Delhi.
We want the indigenous people to rule our land, and we don't want other peoples to come there and settle there. We don't want to change our demography.
And today, that trust in India, that constitutional commitment on the part of the Indian state, this stands virtually demolished. So this is a moment of grief, shock, betrayal for the people of Kashmir.
Now, much of the anger that we're hearing is also being directed at the way in which India has carried this out. Kashmir's parliament wasn't consulted. Local politicians, including the former Kashmir Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti, were placed under house arrest. This is her response to this. She says that today marks the darkest day in Indian democracy. To scrap Article 370 is illegal and unconstitutional. But the government has plenty of supporters. These are Kashmiri Hindus who are in fact celebrating today's news, and they're hopeful that the change to the constitution will in fact see more Hindus settle in their state. That could include some of these Kashmiri Hindus who've been living in exile in New Delhi. They've also been celebrating. Here is their reaction.
We congratulate Narendra Modi. Our banishment is ended. The most important thing is that now Jammu Kashmir will prosper. Today is the actual independence.
Now the Kashmiri Hindus will return on our own terms. It is a historic and very good step for us that Article 370 has been scrapped.
Let's get some perspective on this. Ather Zia is from the University of Northern Colorado. She's a professor of anthropology. She's co-written several books on Kashmir. She joins us live from Greeley in Colorado. Professor Zia, there's so much concern over this. There's so much reaction. What do you think about the revocation of Article 370?
Well, we are in extreme shock, but we're not surprised. The relationship that Delhi and Kashmir that they have shared in the last 77 years has been very tenuous. It's been very precarious, and it's required a lot of engineering on the part of the Indian administration to keep this region under control, and that has included political formations that have been put into place inside Kashmir. So right now, we are all very shocked. We are trying to process. It did not come as a surprise to us. which is what we've been talking about for the last 4 years, because it was building up to a point where this article would go. Now, there is one point that I would like to make, that when we are talking about Article 370, it's also positioned as a promise that India made to Kashmiris to uphold their identity, to uphold their unique demography. Well, I would like to kind of like give a perspective on this and say that while it does maintain a relationship with the Indian constitution and India as a country, at the same time, Kashmiris are not loyal. This is not Kashmiris' loyalty to the Indian nation, as showing their loyalty to be a part of the Indian formation. What Article 370 essentially for Kashmiris is to maintain their unique demography and territorial sovereignty. And when I say unique territorial demography, it doesn't always mean that it has to be Muslim in nature.
I understand, Professor Zia, but before we take this any further, I want you to hang on there, because I want to bring in just the perspective from the government, because they've really been playing down today's move. We heard Professor Zia say it's significant, but the BJP spokesperson is saying it's really playing this down. Listen to this.
Article 370 was never a permanent part of the Constitution. In fact, the first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, himself said in Parliament that it's a temporary provision. Secondly, this move that's been done by the Narendra Modi government is essentially not for the rest of India. It's about the people of Jammu and Kashmir. It's about them being able to finally have greater economic benefit, basically ensure that what kind of rule that they would have in terms of the growth that we are seeing in the other parts of the country.
So that was the perspective from the BJP. Let's go back to Professor Zia, who was talking about the sensitivity and identity, whereas the BJP, in fact, are playing this very much down.
Well, the point is that I agree with what the BJP spokesman is saying when he says that Article 370 was never meant to be permanent. It never was meant to be permanent because the plebiscite was to be held. That's the second part of the equation. And the plebiscite was never held. And that has been avoided, and that has been ignored by India. And that part is not being talked about at all. And that's what Kashmiris are demanding. They're demanding plebiscite. And in the last 3 decades, there is an assertiveness that we need to have the third option of independence. So, of course, it was a temporary provision. But then there's another thing. In 2015 and in April 2018, the High Court of Jammu and Kashmir has already said that Article 370 has become a permanent part of the Constitution of India as well as Kashmir. And same in April 2018, the Supreme Court of India said the same thing. So when BJP and when the people who are kind of supporting this move, when they are talking about this is only a half truth when they're saying that its abrogation it was temporary. Yes, it was temporary, but it had to have a plebiscite because that was following the temporary provision, and that has not been given to Kashmiris.
Incredibly complicated situation. Again, we're out of time. Professor Zia from the University of Northern Colorado, thank you so much for talking us through it. I'm sure we'll be discussing this at length in the days and weeks to come.